Hello, everyone. This is Oliver doing the data viz session. I think we're ready to start. Uh, yep, I can see people coming in. So we're going to kick off with a quick Menti poll to get us thinking to start with. So if you haven't done that before, this is a separate browser you open, type in menti.com and then input the following code 91 54 21 51. Great. So I'm going to get that started. So any latecomers, you can enter menti.com and use the code which is appearing at the top. Just put a in the chat about that. Great, yeah. So thanks for a couple of people voting. So really, this question is just to get us to think about what kind of data viz creator are you? So are you a superhero dog? You know what you're doing? You're genius dolphin. I think one's creating some data viz itself. Are you a bit confused? There's lots of tools out there. You're not really sure if you're doing it right. Are you a grumpy cat? I mainly put this one in just because I love grumpy cats. But do you feel a bit, not sure if this is for me? Or are you yet to get started? So are you one of those sleepy sloths? Really just a chance to put some cute animal photos up to start with. Yeah, and if you haven't got onto here, so just kind of look at the top, menti.com and use the code 91 54 21 51. Remember to put it in a different browser. It's good to have it on your phone. It's great, got a lot of votes coming through. So confused that you come to the right place then, especially you guys. And I hope you feel a bit less confused by the end. So I'm going to go into the next question, which should pop up. So really, we're sort of looking at some sort of data viz already here by doing it quite live. So how often do you use data viz in your work? So all the time, every now and then, a few times, or never? Like, is it not something you've done, but you kind of want to, or you think maybe it might be relevant? Loving seeing all these bubbles coming. So yeah, so we've got quite a nice spread actually. Pretty much everybody has done it before at some point in their work. Great, and I think we've got most responses there. So I'll go on to the next one. So what's the main reasons you use data viz? So do you think you can only select one of these? So is it communicating clearly, finding learning insights? Is it making a report look pretty? And if I've been given £1 for every time I've been told to make this report look pretty by putting one of your charts in, I'd be very rich. And it's actually a little bit annoying to hear that. Or none of the above, you never use it really. So yeah, good to see communicating clearly is a big one. And that's definitely what it can help with when done right. And finding learning insights, something which is used for less, I think, but definitely has a big role to play. And then just the final one for the Menti questions, and I think there's a couple already in there. So yeah, finally, what data viz tools have you used? And I'm pretty sure everyone's at least used Excel. That's a big one coming up here. Pen and paper, I love to see that. Yeah, sometimes forget about that. And yeah, Power BI, big one. Tableau. Yeah, I was expecting to see some of them. Confused Al. That might be from before. Uh, Great, yeah, getting loads through here, and I think you'll get a link to download some of this data later. So it's worth like going through some of these. I won't have time to touch all of these, and I don't know all of them either. But yeah, great to see so many out there. And I think that just shows there's a lot of tools out there to help us. A lot of these free or have free parts of it. So definitely within our reach. Right, I'll go back to the presentation now. So, one second. And Yeah, so so my main kind of hook for today is that charities should be using more data viz. Um, and yeah, really, like I get a bit annoyed sometimes when I see these like big reports which come out which don't have any charts in there to kind of help people who may be more visual or to help kind of communicate those clearings. Here's an example. I'm picking on the Centre for Charity Effectiveness here. They had some really great data, and it was a really important issue about diversity of trustees at foundations. And I saw this table and I was like, this is such good data, but there was kind of a visual which went along with it. So on Twitter, I just created these charts to kind of really put the pinpoint on that. So for example, that waffle chart at the top, you see 99 out of 100 foundation trustees are white. So really just kind of brings that to life really. And I think like the public is very open to read data viz, especially in the last year. So we've all become a lot more literate, I find. I'm sure a lot of us was looking at data visualizations all the time about COVID rates, so looking at those government dashboards, seeing what it's like in your area, looking at those government briefings, seeing what was happening. Data viz came up a lot, sometimes used badly, sometimes used well. And this is a really good example from the Financial Times. So this was quite early on, so in April, and John Murdoch Burns started plotting these kind of regular charts, which helped us kind of see that sort of Europe and the US were following a different kind of trend to those in Asia. A bit more of a positive one here. So this one's about kind of bursting some misconceptions. So here, in Chile, there was a big kind of a second wave, but they're also quite vaccinated quite a lot, which a lot of people kind of felt, does this mean the vaccinations are working? So what John did here was to separate the age groups. Look at that blue one. So that's the ones which age ranges which are mostly vaccinated, and then comparing it to in those which go into intensive care and those who sadly die, and sort of seeing kind of you can really kind of clearly see through this method that he chose that the vaccines seem to be working there. And elections too. So we would have seen quite a lot of maps at the weekend following the local elections and the mayoral elections. This one was floating around in the Biden-Trump election. So this is using the 2016 map where someone chose to show the data on a county basis, which kind of shows quite a lot of red. This one's shows us a lot more complex. So what the creator did here, they decided to allocate a bubble for each kind of area and the size of votes. So you can kind of see that some of those areas which were quite red were actually quite white now because there isn't that many people living there. It just kind of helps us kind of understand the data a bit more in a better way. Yeah, so basically those kind of two examples from outside the charity sector are kind of showing that we can do it, guys. Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Oliver, who does evaluation for an NHS charity called Imperial Health Charity. So I do a lot of data viz in my work as much as possible because I think it's the best way to kind of show those evaluation insights to my team and to outside of people. And then in my personal life, I like to use a lot of data viz as well, but on less serious issues, things like the Oscars, Eurovision Song Contest, and the Drag Race TV shows. So data viz is for everything, really. These are the few things we're going to touch over in the next 15 minutes or so. So reasons to do it, building on what we kind of did in the Menti, look at some more of those tools in a bit more detail, and then finding my tips on how to create an effective data viz. So here's just some of the examples I've kind of pulled out that charities, social organizations can use it. So external static research findings, we see a lot of data viz in this space. So for example, this is from the King's Fund. And basically they want to show kind of the power of vaccines really. So this is a stream graph, and you can see I've got an explanation in each time I use a chart. But here you can see diphtheria, the pink one, was quite widespread until the vaccine came in. So it's really kind of shows that kind of data from a kind of a big overview. And Next one, so external static reports for supporters. Here's a great example from the Lloyds Bank Foundation, a funder, from their 2018 annual report, showing kind of where they kind of funded most using kind of their grants data. And then social media. So a lot of us are using social media as a way to reach supporters, people who are interested in our campaigns and things like that. And you have to be a bit different here because people don't have much time when they're scrolling through Twitter. We all do it too. So you need to kind of touch their attention so then they can like, retweet, follow a link, things like that. It's also a great opportunity for animation. So for example, like I said, I'm quite interested in Drag Race. I've been following their Twitter followers each week, and at the end, kind of a bar chart race. So it's quite visually appealing. So this was something the Terence Higgins Trust used for their campaign, Can't Pass It On their social media. Number 4, filtering grant applicants to aid decision making. And I haven't heard too much about this. This is something I've been starting to do with my charity, which gives all the grants out. So you can get quite a lot of grantees perhaps sometimes, and each bubble here represents a grantee. So I decided to kind of put their information into Flourish and group them by theme, shade them by priority score, which from the assessors, and then size them by the grant requested. And I thought it was just quite a good way to get everyone to have a good overview of who's applied for this money, and kind of make sure all of the kind of areas are explored, and just kind of a good tool for that, really. And next one, dashboards. So these are kind of normally with live information or regularly updated information for people to filter and play with as they please, really. Here's an example on Tableau Public from MPC. So last summer, they kind of put all together all the data which charities were navigating for in their work with COVID. So here people could kind of look at the kind of area they were living in, and kind of narrow down the data as they wish. And then number 6 here, so reporting back to those who shared their data, which is something we should all be doing more in the sector, since we're collecting it and asking for people for personal data sometimes. And here's just another dashboard and a great example from Street League. So they have this dashboard on their website. It's updated live, and anybody, including the young people they work with, can come and have a look at see if they're meeting their KPIs, really. So yeah, let's have a look at some of the data viz tools to try out. So I'm looking forward to going through those we looked at in the Menti poll earlier to see if there's any new ones out there for me. And I'll just go through a couple of them which don't require any coding. Some data viz you might want to be, if you're a coder, you can do lots of bespoke stuff, but let's just focus on the simple stuff today. So here's Power BI and Tableau, those kind of dashboards. They're kind of a good go-to for that kind of thing. So Tableau Public is free, but your information is publicly available. So you might want to purchase the paid account if you can use some sensitive data. For example, I'm doing this at the moment to develop dashboards for my trustees who we were meeting online. They don't have their papers then anymore, and they kind of want to feel closer to our grant making and some of our other stats that we do. Next down, Infogram and Flourish. They're really good tools to try out some different charts. I tend to use, for example, Flourish for things like bubbles, or some more complex things, and then use different ones for different kind of charts. Also, they're more design kind of element because data viz is about design as well. There's the Noun project, so you can get so many unlimited kind of icons, which can bring a bit of visual element to maybe one statistic you might have to kind of illustrate that. And there's also Figma that I've kind of used, kind of like a design software. It's free on Macs to use, and I've done that with more bespoke kind of visualizations. But I want to talk mainly about Data Wrapper right now, because this is my go-to data visualization software. So I'll just show us a few examples of the stuff I've made for my charity using this software. So as I said, I work for an NHS charity, so we're connected to a specific trust, a group of hospitals. So we really wanted to know kind of how they were dealing throughout the COVID. So I updated this weekly to kind of see kind of how much under pressure they were, kind of did it look like we were going to have a second wave specifically at our hospitals, and how we would have to prepare for that. So it's a really good tool to kind of communicate weekly with my colleagues, make sure everyone was on the same page. NHS data also has information about all other hospital trusts. So here I kind of created a table, and a table doesn't have to be boring. You can have these cool like chart features in there, colors. You can also make them into heat maps, things like that. And sometimes it's good for some of this more complex kind of longer kind of data. Here's a chart I made on Data Wrapper with some survey results. So we survey our NHS staff every year at our specific hospitals. And you can see here the darker blue results from 2020. And there was bigger growth in strongly agree. So that's something we're quite proud about and how we're able to support them. And this is a good chart you can use for survey results because when people have to select from different options, it's going to add up to 100%. And then you can kind of easily compare it against other kind of questions or different people who answered that question. This is not from work, but I don't use a lot of maps, but there's a lot of map functionality on Data Wrapper. So here's one I did to celebrate gay marriage in Northern Ireland. And just a similar one, it's a kind of a sort of a range plot or dumbbell plot to kind of compare two different things together, really. So I use the London city data for this, for Pride. And yeah, so final bit from me. So how to create an effective data viz. So I'm going to try and give my tips really quickly, but there's a lot more into it, and there's a lot of stuff you can kind of look up and podcasts and stuff you can listen to as well. So when I approach a data viz, I kind of take three sort of general steps really. So first, I let the data guide me. So first I make sure that data is credible because I'm going to be creating something from it. And then I try and look for patterns. So if I've got it in an Excel spreadsheet, I will condition it. So color it, use their automatic kind of functionalities of Excel. So the more red ones show higher or lower values so I can quickly see what's happening. Create a lot of pivot tables, do a lot of things like that. Sometimes people just create data viz from the data they get, but I think it's good to build on that as well. So I would generally add in another column to try and get the averages, look at maybe the differences between the two things we can compare, or change the groupings up a bit. So instead of having maybe like a data for each age, I might kind of combine ages. So look at 25 to 35 and compare that between 35 and 45. Sometimes you can get a better kind of touch of story that way. The next tips, decide on your audience and find a story. So have a research question, kind of like you were treating it like any evaluation. What is this chart going to help me answer? I also like to sketch out ideas on pen and paper, and make sure you're using the appropriate charts for your data. So for example, pie charts show proportion of a whole. So that wouldn't show a different kind of data, and that's sometimes the trick some people miss. And then just my final point here, which I'll expand on the next slides, keep your design clean and simple. So think about accessibility here and make it deliberate, justifiable, and explainable. And that's not what's happened in this case. So here's just an example I completely made up of a bad chart, and we're going to quickly improve that. So it's to show that even if you do it on Excel, you can make it look quite good in the end. So I've got a big problem here is the 3D chart. It makes it quite misleading. I think it's kind of hard to know what number that is when you use 3D. So it already looks quite a lot better. The next problem, you can see in the y-axis, it starts at 40K, which is something you shouldn't be doing with bar charts. You should start at 0. Line charts are a different story. So I've started that there, and you can see environment looks a lot bigger than it was already. This is the thing to avoid. It looks like a 50-50 here, but actually that starts at 98. Delete any chart junk. So try to help your viewer, don't confuse them. So I took out some of those lines and the key. Then I took out the y-axis completely, really, because it just felt like I could just label these directly to kind of save some time for the viewer. And then I turned it on its side because those kind of names weren't looking too tidy in there. They're all diagonal. Then I reduced that kind of width to make the columns a bit wider to make it look a bit less Excel-y, because we're all very familiar with Excel. Then I ordered by size. This is about, again, trying to do some work for your viewer, so they don't have to try and work out which is criminal justice bigger than young people or not. And then I love rainbows, but I don't think color. I think color should always be used deliberately. So if those colors don't mean anything on top of the labels, you should be using them. So here I stripped that all out. But the problem now is I don't really have a story here. So for example, this is where color can come in handy. And I've highlighted mental health, and it really pinpoints by just using that very sparingly, that color option. And the final one, I think you should always retitle your data visions with what you kind of want people to look at. So instead of saying, here's some grants data from this year, here I want to say mental health is the third highest expenditure. And here's just a reminder of where we started. And I hope you agree that this one, the finished project, is a bit better than where we started. And if you take anything from this presentation, please don't use any 3D charts. And I'm sure you wouldn't anyway. Just to sort of finish us off, so I have a Flickr site that I kind of collect really good examples, because there are good examples in the charity sector. It's really good for inspiration. So do check that out. And yeah, I'll see if there's any time for questions. If there's anything in the Q&A. Okay. So yeah, so this one's easy to answer. So yeah, the slides are available after use. I can just pop in if you hold on to the end, I'll put the link in so you can get straight to that Google Slides. Is there an easy to follow guide? Yeah, so I'll put some other links into that too, but there's quite a lot of stuff online now where you can say what kind of data you have, and then you can kind of follow what kind of chart options you have available for that. So for example, if you are doing a proportion of the whole, it will show kind of all the kind of options you might want to choose. And because I'm limited time, I'm going to avoid the really difficult ones. Yeah, so James, in your experience, do different audiences prefer different types of data viz? And yeah, totally. So sometimes I think like I generally just like using bar charts quite a lot because it is the best way to show the data a lot. But if you kind of know your audience isn't really like that kind of stuff, which is generally people who aren't too keen on data, you might want to do something a bit more exciting, you know, to really do the work of engaging them really first. And so like sometimes like bubbles are a bit more fun for that rather than like a bar chart, even though it's harder to compare, but it draws them in, and as long as the data kind of still works with that. Oh yeah, the Flickr account, I'll put the link in a minute as well. And so data wrapper from Claire. So you actually, I think you can upload it into that, or you can just sort of copy and paste if you've got your data is too massive. So it goes through like a data stage, and then it helps you select which chart you want to use, and then you get to sort of the finishing touches, or see what that data looks like in another chart. It's a really good website. It saves me so much time, and I keep all my templates on it, so I get to repeat the data quite a lot. I don't know, Daisy, about Power RAM. I think like I do some sort of coding, and that might require a bit more, but for most of the stuff on here, you don't need to have too much RAM on your computer. Survey data from Louis' question. So like I said in the presentation, like a stacked horizontal bar chart, I think is really good for survey data, because then you can kind of compare, like 36% said strongly agree, 12% agree, and you can kind of add them up yourself as a viewer and then compare it with others. That's my go-to. And I think coming to an end now, so I'll just try and put some of those links in if you stay with me. So I'm just going to put this in the chat. Hold a moment on that presentation, because I think I just have to unlock it, but it will come unlocked soon after. And this is the Flickr account. Have a look at lots of charts. And was there something else? But yeah, feel free to message me as well. I'll just put that on there in case you needed something specific. Or you can get me on Twitter at Ollie Carrington. Here's my email. Great, thanks so much for joining me. That was pretty quick. And yeah, enjoy your lunch now. And I think the next session starts at about 1:30. But yeah, I'll stay on here, but feel free to leave now.